Greetings to all sane exiles. Have a powerful day. The greatest changes in the history of Ukraine are coming, which of course were triggered by Zelensky's emergence as the greatest leader of all time. We'll also discuss Ukrainians who want to return to Ukraine where funds are ready to be distributed, and about the fact that there might not be electricity in Ukraine, and most likely that's how it will be. In general, there's a lot to discuss today. Plus, I'll also mention the nuclear power plant, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is also being talked about a lot, and not without reason. First, let me show you what's happening in this second Switzerland right now. For example, in Kyiv, it's no longer the military enlistment officers pacifying people, but police officers, people who are supposed to protect and are paid with Ukrainian taxpayers' money. They are now starting to pacify citizens as well. Right in the evening, out in the open street, in front of the eyes of probably hundreds of people, some of whom, to be fair, tried to free the citizen, but it didn't work. He was taken away and they even sprayed the citizens. Honey, what kind of madness is this? I just didn't show the full video because YouTube rules don't allow showing violence or bad language. There were quite a few of those words said, but you can watch the full video on my Telegram channel. Here, there's a QR code displayed. Just point your phone or tablet camera at it and you'll go straight to where you need to be. Or there's a link in the description, just click on it and you'll be redirected. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel, of course. So, what's going on here? Here's what's happening. A whole special meeting has been held. Look, there are 4 happy millionaires, and one of them most likely is a billionaire, the one sitting with his back to us. These are the mayors. A U.S. citizen whose entire family lives in the U.S. and whose real estate is also in the U.S. lives there. США, и недвижимость тоже в США. Budanov, the head of the president's office, and the former prime minister are discussing the future of Ukraine. As for Shmihal, this Shmihal, it doesn't matter where you put the stress. Nothing good will come of it anyway. Nothing good is happening. So, at this wonderful meeting where all these people in black were sitting, it reminded me of different things. They discussed 4, or rather 43 key points or something like that. Directions. Diplomacy is the first one. Ours is the greatest in the world because Sibiha is behind all our diplomacy. This citizen here with a portable bulletproof vest for his head. You have to protect your head since an English expert needs to take care of himself and he knows English just brilliantly. The second is the humanitarian track. Well, how do you use up the budget? That's a humanitarian task and a new form of government support. Moreover, some decisions are made outside the public sphere. As Mashachuk used to say, ours are brought out. It's a whole public space, but now nothing is brought out here anymore. And the first direction is diplomacy. Almost every day, the president says he is in contact with representatives of the US president and European partners. You can be with them, so let's get this portable bulletproof vest out of here already. You can stay in touch every minute, but the main thing in general is not how much you communicate with someone or what actions you take, but the effectiveness of those actions, the efficiency, so to speak. That is, if you talked and made some decisions and those decisions led to some situational maybe but positive results, that's good. But if you just talked and talked, wasted your energy and ended up crying, that's not good. As Ukrainians say, there's absolutely no point in that because these negotiations waste money and the time of people who are being paid. Again, a huge amount of money from Ukrainian taxpayers, I mean from the budget. Why talk every day? Why contact someone if there's still no point? This is a rhetorical question, of course. It's answered, as always, by the greatest ministry of rhetorical questions, golden shores of milky rivers. We will wait for their answer. Why all this? Why is it their main thing? What is all this for? Why us? Why is all this happening to us? The next direction we have is also military, and here we have missile defense. Bilateral documents on the production and supply of drones, including the drone deal. Why write this in English in the English language? I don't know. A deal on drone production and preparation of meetings in several formats. Well, for some reason, there is no preparation for peace here, or even preparation for the preparation of peace either. Although Zelensky says every day, here we are ready for peace, but Putin is not ready for peace. We're ready. Why we are not ready for peace is absolutely impossible to understand because he has been saying this every day, probably since 2023 or so, about peace. And also the humanitarian direction. What do we have here? But here, the important task is really the continuation of exchanges between Russia and Ukraine regarding prisoners. And again, there is no peace here. Well, and the third direction concerns new decisions in support of Ukraine, primarily in the energy sector. The energy sector is in such a state that it'll fall apart if you touch it, but they are preparing some important decisions. But here again we see, well, new photos. I don't know how people in Ukraine feel about such photos, but if I were a journalist, I wouldn't publish something like that. I mean, people live there, some in destroyed houses or cities, some don't even have food or clothes. Commentators wrote that the situation in Ukraine has reached the point where people buy clothes and then share them among a family of 4. And here they're showing us these millionaires who sit against a backdrop of some lanterns and green lawns, which again require a huge amount of money to maintain. And there they chat about something, drinking water, or maybe not exactly water, but that's not interesting anymore. One of the improvements, apparently, that they agreed on is tougher punishment for draft dodgers. What changes are the members of parliament preparing here? Let's take a look. Stricter accountability for men required to serve who, after being summoned, fail to report to the military enlistment office. Why don't they show up, you might wonder? But not everyone wants to be an assault trooper with the initiators to storm the nearest grove, but more precisely, as these figures say, to find their place in any role. If you love dumplings, you'll eat dumplings in the army. If you love comics, you'll read comics in the army. But that's what they'll tell you. If you're an economist, you'll be an economist. Like if you're a designer, then you can, or go into IT, or control drones at war. Really? According to the lawmaker, there is some kind of reform, and it will affect not only the work of the military enlistment office, but also the mechanisms for monitoring compliance with mobilization laws. The draft laws haven't been registered yet, but they're already being discussed in Parliament for later. One of the options is to use the tax identification number to find those liable for military service who have administrative violations and unpaid fines. This is our country in a smartphone. That is, everyone has been counted, like in the Soviet cartoon, and you've been counted too, and by the number of this count, by the TIN, the individual tax number. And they'll find you, and considering that cameras are everywhere now, they'll also use some kind of facial recognition to search for citizens with this very administrative liability. By the way, in China, such a surveillance network over citizens is now being formed. Even the one in 1984 didn't have this. Orwell didn't write about that, it's just crazy. But in Ukraine, I'm more than sure they'll adopt the experience of their Chinese comrades and start implementing all of this too. Someday I'll tell you about this system. They'll be watching you almost even in the bathroom. So, what other options do we have? Are there any? With this code, they'll be looking for those who already have administrative violations and unpaid fines. Additionally, they'll reform the military enlistment office. Authorities are specifically seeking ways to make notifying citizens in public places less confrontational, which is quite interesting. What is notifying citizens in public places, you might ask? That's the video I showed at the beginning. This is what the authorities euphemistically and shamefully call public notification. They hit someone on the head, notification, broke someone's leg, notification. Wonderful, of course. That's just crazy. And also they're planning to divide things there because they're going to split the enlistment office staff into 2 groups. I'll add this myself based on what I read because there's a lot of bureaucratic text there. I'll put it simply. The first group deals with what used to be cannibalism. It's unclear. And before, this is a reform for them. And the second group deals with supporting the families of servicemen. How will they provide this support? It means that each family of a serviceman will be assigned a separate worker who will periodically allocate electronic points to them. Is that right? I'll go. Honestly, I don't understand why. Just don't bother the families of servicemen. Give them the benefits you promised and pay the money you owe for death or injuries. And, well, I can't say that everything will be fine, but at least for the family, relatively speaking, because those are the families of servicemen that I know. There, the government does absolutely everything to avoid recognizing a fallen Ukrainian soldier as deceased. They declare them missing in action, missing without a trace. And if you still want to, there's no money at all, but in general, it's a brilliant reform. Of course, they'll spend on it too. I'm more than sure that they've already spent on it as well. Some money, not a small amount, which will immediately be siphoned off by the greatest thinkers in the history of the universe. By him, his 4 people, or someone else. Anyway, there are plenty of people here eager to get their hands on the budget. Fedorov, the Minister of Defense, who currently has no military experience, claims that there are technologies here and mobilization at the front. And he says we can't talk about specific proposals right now, so why write an article if you can't talk about specific proposals? But here, anonymous sources will talk about him. The minister is trying to make the most of technology, but how will they be implemented? How effective will they be? Accordingly, this will show how much the pressure on mobilization processes will decrease. Mobilization processes and notifications look something like this, and here, a lawmaker is saying that it will be divided. By the way, that's what I was talking about. Social support and notifications will be autonomous and no new technology will be used to find those liable for military service. So basically it turns out that some autonomous structures, apparently private ones, will be beating up citizens and shoving them into vans, which is really surprising. And on top of that it's really surprising. They'll also use advanced technology to find those liable for military service. I think this is great. Advanced technology means progress for all. And remember, they also used to say, Ukrainians, come on over, here's Sibiha, how does he become a citizen again? I'm already tired of showing this helmet, but here it is. He said that even granting citizenship to refugees for returning from Europe is unexpected, but it's a fact. In Ukraine, they'll have to compete for their own citizens. How many refugees are abroad? Here, this great diplomat is talking about the fact that apparently previously the number of 6 million people was mentioned, but it turns out the scale of migration is significantly greater. Can you imagine? This has never happened before, and here it is again. And this is what we talked about back in 2023 when this migration channel started covering new topics. Not just aid to Ukrainians in Europe, but also what you see now. Subscribe to the channel and don't forget to subscribe to this Telegram channel. So, if before they thought there were 28 million, 30 million, or some say 36 million people left in Ukraine, that's what they think. And Crimea and Donbass and everything else there, including Mozambique, where there might be just 2 Ukrainians, they subtracted a little 6 million and got a number like 30, for example, 36 minus 6. They didn't count the emigration to Russia, which is also over 1 million people who left. Now, they said that, well, it's probably much more, but is it more than you thought before? So in Ukraine, most likely there are about, God willing, 22 million people left, maybe 20, maybe even less. No one knows anymore, but K is planning to take it back for himself. This is on a much larger scale, and in Ukraine there is a huge problem, serious consequences for the economy, the labor market, demographics, and the post-war recovery of Ukraine. So you are restoring it yourselves. Who brought the country, yes, to such a state, the people, right? No, you brought it to this, so you restore it, invite your own children. Some are here, some are there, some are building their careers in the United Kingdom, some are vacationing in Haiti or somewhere else on the island of Goa with all sorts of interesting characters. So, with all your children, go ahead and restore it, dig, work, restore it with your own shovel handles and everything else. And now we're going to bring back Ukrainians who have lived abroad for many years, and let's have them restore all this destruction that we've caused. And again, they will be using up the budget here, which is meant for the restoration of this country. The Ukrainian side says that the country is already facing a labor shortage in many industries. It's surprising, but it's a fact and quite something. For us, this is really becoming a security challenge, and the government is working on a set of measures to encourage citizens to return. Yeah, nobody needs you with your incentives. You'd be better off stimulating your own thinking in your brain so it actually leads to some positive results for the country. So far, they're not just negative, and this negative development of the country's economy is also very noticeable. By the way, one of those who is pushing for the negative development of the country and endless war is Kaczynski. I don't think you know, that's in Africa. Together with Dugin, by the way, he used to hang out with Restovich at various nationalist meetings. This is not a joke. There are a lot of photos about this on the internet. And now he is making the following statement.
The next years and the choice of prices and the trick of Ukrainians. If I were in the place of Ukrainians, I wouldn't get involved. Sign agreements and don't hold elections.
There's no need for elections or peace agreements because the old man is against it. Why the old man doesn't sign a contract at 60 plus is absolutely impossible to understand. Wait, before that he hangs out in the studio with Yanina Sokolova and doesn't say anything fake, no.
Sign agreements and don't hold elections. We always get the short end, maybe.
But here he's right. Elections have never led to a positive result in Ukraine. Things just keep getting worse and worse, starting with Yushchenko. Something needs to be done about this.
They need to focus on it, to specialize in war, yes?
Let's make it a military state, actually. Ukraine is already a military state, he says. Let's specialize in war. Specialize. Who's stopping you? Go to the trenches and specialize as much as you want.
So that's the alternative.
Well, he still doesn't give up on fighting.
Yeah, to fight. The alternative, take that with you. I never took anyone except Sokolova, the former Russian actress from a couple of TV series, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't confuse her with Sokolovskaya. Another Russian actress, that's the character KH. Let's put it this way. In 2010, VT acted in all sorts of TV series, quite successfully for herself. She lived in Moscow. And then suddenly, right in front of me, she's sitting there, by the way, wearing glasses, having forgotten her prescription glasses, and she's sitting in a bar filled with a bunch of bottles. I don't know why. I can guess, of course, maybe she's still fighting with alcohol so the enemy doesn't get it, but who knows?
Then the war will last as long as...
We will have war for sure all the time. As long as Moscow exists, there will be war. That's how it's been for the last 500 years, so most likely it will be the same for the next.
But Korchinsky says that the war will last another 500 years because Moscow will continue to exist. In general, wonderful plans, of course. These kinds of names especially motivate Ukrainians abroad. They run so fast their hair flies back and their shoes fall off, just at that speed. Ukrainians are eager to return to their beloved homeland, where these kinds of freaks who don't fight themselves call on ordinary people to fight, to prepare their own children and everything else. And on top of that, there are still some so-called brothers left, again all sorts of barbershop heroes who are already asking questions. And after the war, I'll be asking my neighbor, did you fight or not? And I won't sit at the same table with him, because if he didn't fight, wasn't there such an interesting character in my videos? Here's the question again. Does anyone invite you to sit with regular people, or is it you they avoid? Because people like that need to be fed in specialized facilities, specialized rooms, locked everywhere with bars, doors, digital locks, and so on. The government admits that no support programs will be able to ensure the mass return of people without creating proper security conditions. Proper security conditions mean peace, the absence of war, and in addition, the absence of banditry. And I already said that after the soldiers return. Among them, well, let's say 90% are normal, and 10% are those who will behave antisocially, and a couple of percent who will behave criminally. That is, it's gunshots in the street, robberies, basically the dishonest taking away of funds that citizens have accumulated over a long period of time. What security, Sibiha? I understand that this helmet might press on your head a bit, but still, these are very strange arguments. Many Ukrainians continue to stay abroad precisely because of the threat of missile strikes and the uncertainty about the future. So uncertainty is always with you, it will always be there, it'll be there for these 500 years, so why should ordinary people come back then? And we're told that this is exactly why the issue of security is being discussed. Ukraine with international partners. What partners? What kind of security? What are they telling us here? For many families, the decisive factors will be stability, availability of housing, employment opportunities, and access to education for their children. And on top of that, they're also saying here that Sibiha suddenly said they would pay Ukrainians to return. One of the areas of work is creating financial support mechanisms for those who decide to return. And, following Switzerland's example, they're painfully moving forward and want to provide financial assistance for returning, compensation for travel, and support for renting housing after arrival. But are they in their right mind? A person abroad receives at least 1,000 euros there, and that's enough for rent. Especially if a family of two is working, and with a child it's quite sufficient. But that's unclear. Switzerland, France, or elsewhere all have different amounts. There, in Norway, they earn 5,000 or maybe less or more. Well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, and then suddenly we're told, let's bring these people back, who are used to tasty food that's relatively inexpensive, to normal utilities, predictable, high, but normal gas prices in Ukraine, which are now higher, to normal incomes. They say, let's help you rent some shack in Ukraine and we'll reimburse you $100 for transportation. Are you out of your mind over there? But that's just how it used to be. Zadornov, while he was still in a normal state with a clear mind, used to say, well, they're dumb. I don't know why, but I just remembered Zadornov. Well, that's about it. Financial assistance for returning, yes, for those who want to come back. That's what people are getting. You can get to Ukraine for 150 euros from almost anywhere. Well, not from every point in the world, but pretty quickly. There's some kind of economy flight, a bus, and you're in the country. That's $200. You want to give people $200 so they can come back. That's how things are here. It's just crazy. I don't know who would come back under these conditions. Of course, there are people who have much more difficult circumstances, but for most, yes, almost all of my acquaintances who came, for example, after 2022, some have already started a company, some are working at a decent job. There are people who complain a little that they don't have enough money, or that the tax office took more than expected, but absolutely no one is planning to go back, especially not for 200 баксов на дорогу, еще на хлеб. Bucks for the trip. You might as well give money just for bread without butter and say, here, this is for your food. You could call it food assistance for stale bread or something. That's just crazy. Well, but now let's take a look at these so-called brothers, because there are quite a few of them. So, well, for example, there's one, even some character, he's really unshaven, I don't know. Maybe he should be given money for shaving supplies on top of the aid to get home. For someone, yes, that's me, that's just my style, but this guy, I think he called himself either a soldier or something like that. Well, anyway, right now.
It will come to the point where we're talking about boots on the ground. We want American troops together with Europeans to come and fight alongside our defenders against the Russians. And I think that if things keep going like this, with these kinds of relations between Trump, Putin, the United States, and Russia, then the only boots on the ground will end up on this side, on the side of the Russians. And that could happen if things keep going this way, because we can see that, yes, of course, looking over our right shoulder, but even that can be predicted. 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 Even that can be predicted.
Well, Russia, or rather the US, is basically not with Ukraine at all anymore. I don't know, man. Have you watched the news over the past 2 years or not? But, well, apparently not. And here they would have launched the capacities again at Beyteze, and there's another B-30 here, Beyteze. Totika, the woman. And she's talking about these strikes that Russia is promising to carry out against Ukraine. Shoigu spoke there saying that retaliatory strikes are not scary, and he's not even afraid of Europe because he sent all his diplomats to the IAEA.
It's likely that in the future, Ukraine will be the safest place.
They just blurt things out, and you think, well, who gives you these speeches? You make them up yourselves. You come from some restaurant and not quite sober. You write your speech for tomorrow. What's going on? Where does this come from?
At least you know how to defend yourselves. There was a good statement here from Commander Sersky, who said that we are ready to teach our partners to stand up to evil and the enemy, standing shoulder to shoulder with us.
Yes, of course, our partners are ready to defend themselves. Sure, in Europe, I have so many acquaintances, everyone just wants to fight, right? And everyone said no one is going to fight. And for example, my German acquaintances, whoever you ask, say that if it ever comes to that, they have savings, and if anything happens, they'll leave far away for a long time and let others fight without them.
We will demand more than missiles, equipment, or resources, because defending democracy today is happening specifically in Ukraine.
Are you giving it? What's going on? We need money and you're not giving it to us. Well, that's how things are. They're planning to bring Ukrainians back in large numbers. They say everything is great in Ukraine and offer financial benefits. Can you imagine? That's the idea for renting a shack and returning to Ukraine. Well done. Goodbye, everyone.
After the war, I think in about 2 to 5 years, more likely in 5, you won't even recognize that this country was at war. I think everything will flourish, businesses will reopen, business will develop rapidly, and the construction industry will grow.